Hey, it's Katie, and welcome back to my BookTube channel. Today, I will be telling you guys which books I would keep if I was forced to get rid of all of them except for 30. And I've been wanting to do this video for a while, but I didn't think that I had read enough books for this to actually be challenging for me. But now I've read over 100, so I feel like it's finally time that I can do this, and I'm really excited. I'm not sure how this is going to go because I haven't really planned anything out. I'm going to just pick off my favorite series or books that I can think of, and then I'll show you guys what those are and kind of explain why I would keep those and just kind of go from there. So we'll see, but I'm very excited. So the first ones I'm going to grab real quick are the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. Also, before I get too far into this video, obviously I'm going to keep this to the books that I've read. There's so many more on my shelves and on my TBR that I'm very excited to read, but I feel like I can't really choose to keep them if I'm not sure if I really enjoyed them. So these are just books that I've read and also owned, because there's other books I read from the library or ebooks that I own that aren't physical books on my shelves, so that's not really going to count toward my 30 either. So I don't know if that's really cheating, but it works for me. Also, be prepared for my shelves to be a mess because I'm just going to be pulling books off and stacking up all 30 in front of me. So books are probably going to start to fall over, but that's okay. I'll fix it later. So the first three books, like I said, are going to be Caraval, Legendary, and Finale from the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. I feel like I've probably talked about this series a ton on my channel, but this is the first series that got me back into reading at the beginning of quarantine, and I will always have a special place in my heart for these books, and so I don't think I could ever get rid of them. So this is the first set that I plan on adding to my 30. Next, we have Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, which is probably my favorite fantasy that I've read this year so far. I read it early on in January, and it still consumes my thoughts. I'm obsessed with this world and this concept, and it's just amazing, and I love the passionate enemies to lovers romance in here, so definitely in my 30 that I plan on keeping for sure. Up next, we have Legendborn by Tracy Deonn, and I definitely want to keep this one. I originally read it as a library book and loved it so much that I bought my own copy, but I love it because it's a King Arthur retelling with some really cool magic and like this secret society on a campus, and the relationship between all of the characters is really cool, especially our main character Bree and the love interest Sel, because there's a lot of raw emotions and they're both kind of helping each other heal from their past, and I really enjoyed reading about it, and I feel like if I reread this I would constantly pick up more details, and that's always really fun, so I'm definitely going to keep this one. The next one I would definitely keep is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas, which is the second book in the Acotar series, and I'm just gonna say this one for now because I enjoyed this like 10 times more than A Court of Thorns and Roses, so depending on how hard it is for me to choose the other 30, I might add Acotar, but definitely this one for sure. I loved it. I love Reese and Feyre. Their relationship is amazing. Reese is one of my favorite book characters of all time. I literally didn't even plan on tabbing anything in this book, but there were so many quotes and moments that I wanted to relive. So I have like probably at least 100 tabs in here, and even after reading it, I just went back through and reread all the parts that I tabbed because I am obsessed. Also, this is in no particular order, so even though I'm probably going to say certain numbers for these books, that doesn't mean that's like my 10th favorite book. It just is the order I'm thinking of them in. But these are books 7 and 8. We have Children of Blood and Bone and Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. And this series is a roller coaster of intense emotions. It's a very intricate magic system with rich history woven into it, and the characters are amazing, and there's this quest that they have to go on to bring magic back to the world, and I love it so much. I thought it was just a duology, so I didn't even know there was a third book coming out, and I thought this was the end of everything and it was going to all be wrapped up in a nice little bow, but there's a huge cliffhanger at the end of book 2, and I really need book 3, but that's not part of this video. I just really need it in my life. But I definitely would keep these because I enjoyed it so much, and even rereading it, I think it would still feel fresh because, like I said, it's a rich magic system and history. So I think I would still pick up on other details and learn a lot more about this world by rereading it. Okay, I'm going to try to grab some romance because all of the books that I've grabbed so far are fantasies. So I'm going to see if there's any romance I would keep. I think for sure I would probably keep Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer because this was adorable. This is about a girl who can cast instant karma on everybody around her except for her like arch nemesis that's in her science class with her, and they end up doing this extra credit together at a rescue facility for sea animals, and it's just adorable. The love interest is so cute, and the fact that you get to experience all of these animals and you learn about ways to help the environment and ways to help rescue centers, and it just warmed my heart. It is so sweet. So I'd probably keep this one. The next romancy one that popped in my head was Tweet Cute by Emma Lord, and this is a Twitter rivalry between a local deli and a burger chain over this grilled cheese recipe that's supposedly stolen. And these two high school kids know each other at school, but they don't realize that that's the person behind the other Twitter account that they've been battling. And there's so much banter and sarcasm, and I love it so much. And also you get that little taste of the food and the baking and cooking and all of that. So this is adorable, and if you haven't read it yet, you definitely should. This next one is one of my favorites, and it makes me want to travel to Scotland, and that is Prince Charming by Rachel Hawkins. It's about a girl whose sister just got engaged to the Prince of Scotland, and so she ends up being dragged over to that country and thrown into this experience that she didn't really want to be a part of, and so she finds herself in the tabloids and having to kind of tone down her personality. And she has this guy who's supposed to help her kind of change who she is to fit in more, and they end up kind of having feelings for each other. So it's very adorable. There's so many fun things that they do in Scotland that, like I said, make me want to travel there. So I would definitely keep this one because just looking at it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy. I'm kind of a little stuck right now because some of the other books that I loved reading, I don't know if I can even read again, like All Your Twisted Secrets and Stalking Jack the Ripper, because it's kind of like a thriller mystery, and once you find out like who it is or like the big plot twist at the end, I don't think it would be the same experience reading it again. So even though I loved them and I don't want to get rid of them, I don't know if I can really say I would keep them because, like I said, it wouldn't have that same impact rereading them. So I might not grab those yet. Oh, I forgot about one of my favorite series that I read last year, so I will grab that real quick. Okay, so that series that I was telling you guys about is The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. So we have Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and Clockwork Princess, and I loved this series so much. This was another roller coaster of emotions for sure, and this is basically like a love triangle that takes place in the shadow world with demons and vampires and werewolves and all of that fun stuff. And it's probably like the one love triangle that I feel like is written the best because it's between obviously a girl and two best friends. So they care about each other the same as they care about her, if not even more, because they're parabatai, which is like the strongest bond you could ever imagine. They're basically brothers. They like share a soul kind of. And so it's very hard for them because they both want to go after this girl, but they don't want to ruin their relationship with each other. And so on top of the cool world that it takes place in and all the other stuff that they're dealing with, I feel like this love triangle is just so well done, and I didn't know who I wanted Tessa to end up with half the time, and the ending of the whole series took me so long to process. Like the epilogue itself just kind of destroyed me, and I definitely would want to relive that, surprisingly. And I feel like I would need to keep all three of these books in order to get that full impact again. Oh my gosh, I don't know how I forgot about this book until just now, but this is one of my favorite contemporary romances, and that's Even If the Sky Falls by Mia Garcia. I feel like this is another one I talk about pretty frequently on this channel, but it's about a girl who kind of wants to escape her life at home, so she goes on this mission trip and ends up feeling more trapped than ever. So she runs away and ends up joining the Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans, where she bumps into this guy and they decide to use fake names and not talk about their real lives and just experience all New Orleans has to offer together for the next 24 hours. And they go on so many adventures, and it's so fun, and their romance is really well done, even though, like I said, it's only a 24-hour period, so you would think that it would seem really rushed and that it would be like insta-love, and I guess it's a form of insta-love, but I think it's very well done, and I actually really, really enjoyed it, and as somebody who wants to travel to New Orleans one day, I loved living vicariously through them, and again, this book just has a very special place in my heart. Up next is another fantasy that I love, which is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. And this is one that I'd heard about for a long time on BookTube before I actually picked it up. But I ended up really loving it, and it definitely lived up to the hype. And I haven't read the rest of the series. I've just read this first one, but I still have very positive feelings toward it when I think back. It's been almost a year since I've read it. And this is one of the first books that I read that is told from dual perspectives, and ended up really changing my viewpoint on that. I ended up really loving it in this book, and it made me appreciate having multiple perspectives in the other books that I've read since then. But I think that's probably my favorite part of this book, was that it's told from dual perspectives, because you really get to connect to both of these characters before they end up crossing paths, and you end up rooting for them on their own before you root for them as a unit, and I've really enjoyed that, and the writing in this is absolutely amazing. I read every word in this book, and I definitely need to read the rest of the series, but for now, we'll just keep this book. After that, we have two more of my favorite contemporary romances, which is Love and Gelato and Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch. And these are another set of wanderlust reads. These make me want to travel so bad. This one takes place in Italy, and this one takes place in Ireland. And they're just so fun. And they also have other elements to them. So this first one includes elements of a journal that the main character's late mother left for her, and this one includes a guidebook that the main character is using to get over a heartbreak. And I love having those additional elements to the story too. I feel like that's such a nice touch, and it's so fun to experience things from these countries that aren't typical tourist attractions and are things that make you kind of feel like you're a local, even when obviously I'm not. But very cool vibes, very like summery, happy vibes, and just the way that Jenna Evans Welch writes her books is just very charming and enjoyable, and they just leave you feeling very happy and content when you're done with them. So I definitely would keep these for some good pick-me-up reads. These next two are kind of my guilty pleasure reads, and I think that's only because I've owned them for as long as I can remember. I probably got these in middle school or early high school, because I think they came out in like 2011 and 2012. But those two are Beautiful Disaster by Jamie Maguire and Easy by Tamara Weber. And like I said, I've had these for as long as I can remember, and I've probably reread them 5 to 10 times each, because I didn't really own a lot of books when I was younger. I would just get most of them from the library. So whenever I went on vacation or something, I would bring these with me, and I still love reading them. And this is probably where my love for enemies to lovers started. There's like bad boys in both of these, and the whole bad boy, good girl trope. And I'm still obsessed. Like, it's been so long since I've read these that I kind of forgotten what they're about, and I would probably reread them soon because they're very enjoyable for me, so I don't think I could ever get rid of these two. The next book I would want to keep is the only graphic novel that I own, which is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. And if you watched my full review for this book, you might be a little confused because I was honestly kind of hard on it, but that was at a time when this honestly might have been the first graphic novel that I had ever read. And so I didn't really understand a lot about it. And because I'm used to reading some intricate fantasies and romances, I was expecting a lot more substance in here. And I realized that sometimes, especially with graphic novels, you don't need that. This is a very fun, festive story, and the characters go on an adventure, and it's really great, and the illustrations are amazing. And so I would probably keep this because I honestly kind of feel bad about that full review that I gave for this book. And that moment when I filmed it, it was 100% true, but looking back on it, I was definitely a little too hard on this book, and I don't know, it just makes me happy when I look at it now. So I would probably keep it and give it another chance. This next series that I am choosing to keep is a very popular series, definitely a classic YA series if I've ever seen one, and that is the whole Hunger Games series by Suzanne Collins. And I don't think I could ever part ways with these because this, aside from the Twilight series, which I actually don't have, I think I left them at my parents' house, but aside from the Twilight series, this is the first YA series that I ever fell in love with, and this definitely played a huge role in my love for reading when I was younger. So I definitely don't think I could ever get rid of it. I loved this series. I enjoyed the movies, and even though it's very popular and a hyped up series, I still think it lives up to the hype and it's very well done. And I honestly haven't read these probably since the first time I read them when I was younger. So I would love to keep these and maybe one day pass it on to my kids. But regardless, I think I will enjoy this series still to this day. And so I would definitely keep this. I don't know why I didn't think of this one sooner, but I would love to keep Maybe This Time by Casey West. Casey West is one of my favorite romance contemporary authors, and I only own 2 of her books, and this one's my favorite of the 2 because it involves events and everything, and so you get a behind-the-scenes look at what goes into a bunch of different events. I think there's 9 different events in this book, and it's also enemies to lovers, where she keeps bumping into another guy that helps out with all these events, and they don't get along at first, but then they eventually start to understand each other and care for each other, and it's so fun. Like I said, Casey West is one of my favorite authors. I love her writing style, and I definitely would want to keep one of her books. This is really hard. Now that I think I only have like 5 spots left, it's really hard to choose, especially because, like I said, I went with all of my favorites first, so now these are all like my 3 or 4 star reads that I'm picking, and it makes it really difficult to just select a couple to put in this video. You know what? I am going to keep The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black because I was very surprised by this book. I think I even included this in my most surprising reads of 2020. I had this book for so many years, probably since the beginning of high school for me, and I never picked it up because it's a book about vampires, and since Twilight and all that was so hyped up, I really needed a break from that whole genre. And so I thought this would be really cliche, and I was like, I don't know if I want to read a vampire book. But during quarantine, I kind of picked up a lot of books that I had put off reading for the longest time, and I'm so glad I picked this one up because I genuinely enjoyed it, and I love that Holly Black has these dark undertones to her books, and it was really cool, and that caught me off guard, and it was a very thrilling book, honestly, because they were kind of racing against the clock in this world where vampires really do exist, and if you turn into a vampire, you have to go into these cold towns, and once you're there, you can never leave, and so people can also willingly enter these cold towns, but again, you can never leave if you go, and so there is an incident that forces our main character, along with, I think, her ex-boyfriend and some random guy that she saw at this party she woke up at the beginning of this book. And they go on this adventure to the cold town. And it's just a really crazy experience and a world to think about living in. And I don't even know if my summary just made any sense to you guys, but it was very cool. I loved it way more than I thought, and it is a standalone, so I could definitely keep this and reread it and be perfectly happy. Earlier, I mentioned that depending on how easy or hard it was for me to choose these 30, I might go back and add Acotar by Sarah J. Maas, and it is time for me to add that to my stack of 30 because thinking about it, I genuinely did enjoy this book. It's just compared to the second book, it didn't even come close for me, but after reading this first book, I did really, really love it. And so I feel like it'd be fun to have this along with the second so I could at least read those consecutively and get a better feel for the world. Up next, we have Cinderella Is Dead by Kaylin Bayron, and I think I would definitely choose to keep this because it's a very cool Cinderella retelling. It's in a world where Cinderella really did exist over 200 years ago, and so now all of the girls in the society are forced to go to a ball every year, and they try to be chosen by men to marry them. And if they're not chosen, they're never heard from again. And our main character wants absolutely nothing to do with that, so she flees and ends up bumping into Cinderella's last living descendant. And they try to take down the king and this whole society together. And it's also an LGBTQ plus romance, and it's just so well done. I feel like it's such a cool modern twist on such a classic story that we've always heard about growing up. And that was probably my favorite part of the story, was that basically everything you thought you knew about Cinderella is not a lie, but this definitely challenges all of your thoughts and views toward that. And not to mention the cover is stunning. So not that I'm going to keep a book just for the cover, but between that and the cool twist on a classic fairy tale, I definitely think that this is one I would want on my shelves. One of the last books in my 30 that I would keep is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and anyway, and this is just a badass Romeo and Juliet retelling that takes place in 1920 Shanghai, and I feel like that's all you need to know to even want to pick up this book. But this is also an Owl Crate exclusive edition, so not only is it a super cool concept and retelling, but it's also stunning. It has a different color than the original version because this is green instead of black, I think. And then on the inside, we have the hardcover that looks like this, and there's even pictures on the dust jacket of the characters and the setting, and it's signed. So even if I didn't 100% want to keep it for the plot and the characters, even just looking at it is enough for me to keep it. And the last book in my set of 30 will be Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett, and I absolutely love Jen Bennett's writing. I've read 2 or 3 of her books now, and I've enjoyed all of them. And this is another enemies to lovers, which I'm sure you can see a trend. Most of these books I've chosen have enemies to lovers in them, but also the characters have some pretty cool hobbies. They work at a local museum, and it's a girl who just moved there with her dad, and she just got that job, and she butts heads with a security guard there named Porter. And so that's the enemies to lovers part. But also, before she moved there, she started talking to this guy online about movies because that's something that they're both obsessed with. It's one of their hobbies. And so she ended up moving to that guy's hometown without telling him. And so she also has that relationship going on. And it just is a little complicated. But it's a very cool summary read, and I love their hobbies and all of that, and just an adorable enemies to lovers. So I think I would definitely want to keep this and represent how great Jen Bennett is, for sure. Okay, so I'm going to try to lift up all of the books that I ended up picking so I don't have to go through all of them again. I have 3 stacks of 10, and they're kind of big stacks. So we'll see how well this goes. I hope I don't, drop books all over myself. Okay. So here is stack number 1. Oop, turning it the wrong way. Here's stack number 1. Hopefully you guys can see what the titles are. But here's the first 10. Here is the second stack. So 11 through 20. Here is the last stack of 10. It's a little wobbly, so hopefully I don't hit myself with them. But here is the last 10. So this was actually challenging in a way that I didn't expect, because even though I've read over 100 books, some of my favorites are books that I don't even own and I just read from the library, so that made it a little difficult. I feel like once I got past the 15-20 mark, it got really hard because I was just trying to pick books off my shelf that I've read that I genuinely enjoyed and would maybe want to read again. So I thought it'd be challenging because I would have too many books I wanted to keep, but apparently I haven't read enough of these books. So I would love to do another video like this, maybe once I hit 200 books that I've read. So if you would be interested in that, please comment down below, because I feel like that would make it a lot harder because there's so many amazing releases coming out this year, and even a ton of books on my shelf that I'm very excited to read. I just haven't had a chance to yet. So those might be my favorites of this year too. We don't know yet. So I would love to do another one like this after I've read some more books, and maybe that will be challenging in the way that I initially expected. But if you enjoyed this, please like this video and subscribe to my channel, because that would mean the world to me. And if you do subscribe, click the notification bell so you know when I upload next. Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in my next video.